Welcome to Within WordPress, the podcast about WordPress and its wonderful community and all the fine folks that make up that wonderful community. With me today is Thomas. Welcome, Thomas.
Well, thank you very much, Remkus. Pleasure to spend some time with you online here.
Yeah, and this is not our first time. We've already established that we share our love of iron, which is always good to find a friend in iron. But today's topic is at least mostly going to be WordPress and everything related. For those folks that don't know you, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Tom Raef. Online, I'm always known as Thomas, but you can just call me Tom. I started in computers a month after IBM first announced the first piece. So I tell people IBM has...
It's a while back.
Yeah, I go back quite a ways. But in 2007, I started getting more into the security side of things. Before that, I was mostly into networking, like server migrations, updating or migrating like hundreds of desktops for companies, et cetera. But I got more into security and kind of focused in on website security. About the same time Daniel Sid did from Security.
Yep.
And in fact, he and I were both the top two volunteers for a site called badwarebusters.org, started by Max Weinstein, who now I believe is with Sophos. But so anyway, we would volunteer to help people with their infected websites. He started Security. I started We Watch Your Website. So that was in 2007. Back then, I cleaned over 20,000 websites manually. It's like there was no automated procedures. But I figured, okay, in order to scale this, I've got to create some automation. So I dove deep into that, and here we are today.
Yeah. So I recently I have a client whose site got hacked and got hacked again, and I know how to clean, and I do this quite regularly. But this one was particularly pesky. So I asked for your assistance and learned a few more things along the way. So yeah, the art of unhacking a site is essentially what you focus on.
Correct.
Has the focus been on WordPress from the get-go once you started into websites, or has it always been whatever, come at me and I'll help you?
No, yeah. Back in 2007, Joomla was just as popular.
Yeah.
Not a little bit more than WordPress. You had Magento and, a few others. So yeah, we were removing malware from pretty much anything. We did a few ASP sites, Microsoft's technology, but that never really, took off, I think, the way Microsoft had hoped. So yeah, everything we did was pretty much JavaScript and PHP based. So what does that mean? You have I'm assuming you don't know all hacks, like what their vector is or how they come in, but you kind of have automated systems that check for if they're going to do this, this is where they are, or this is what they're going to do, type of thing. How does that work? What we do now for people that are on servers, if you're like on DigitalOcean, Vultr, Hetzner, if we can install our services on the server, it monitors all the websites on that server. So when I say monitor, we're streaming the access logs live to our systems for constant analysis. We're also monitoring the files. So we do file integrity monitoring. So we see when a file has been added or changed on any of your sites. We also monitor the database. So, we see when people are logging in, we see when, a plugin is installed, the whole gamut of things. And we also, on a server, we also like to monitor the processes that are running, because a lot of times hackers will upload, like there's one file that seems to be pretty popular with the hackers, lock360.php. And what it does is it prevents you from changing the infected index and or the htaccess files once they've infected them. It just puts a lock on it. So every time you change it, puts the old one, the infected files right back on there. And that runs as a process in memory. So like I said, we also monitor the processes running too. So
of course, yeah. When they're in memory, they're whatever you do, they're instantly back.
Yeah. And that's, they in the malware industry, they've called that fileless malware.
Yeah.
Because they can delete the file, but the process is still running in memory. So
how do you find those? Or if you are in fact infected, how do you even prevent that from actually executing from memory? Is there a way?
There's not really a good way of preventing it from executing. There's a number of things that you can do, again, depending on the hosting environment. One of the things that we started years ago was, I used to call it sprinkling php.ini files throughout a site. Obviously, they're strategically placed and configured. But, a provider like GridPane prevents PHP code from running in the uploads folder.
Yeah.
Because typically nobody ever needs to run PHP up there. But you could do the same thing with php.ini files. So you can disable various functions too, like base64 and things like that. So there are some things you can do to try and prevent the processes from being created, but the big thing is just trying to secure your site from the get-go. And right now with our file monitoring, we can detect and remove malware in just under 5 seconds. So hackers, create a file, and chances are before they run it or try and use it, our system has detected it and removed it. So
my conclusion is, certainly based on our previous interaction as well, you have a vast knowledge of how the hacking mind works. Out of curiosity, do you have any insight in how people are generally getting in? Is it always a plugin that is insecure or outdated or anything like that? Or is it, I've seen, at least for a couple of clients of mine, I've seen that administrator accounts were compromised. So they essentially just have full root access.
Right.
Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah. Well, the report that we did that summarized last year, 2023, we found that like 60% of websites were hacked through stolen session cookies. And
oh, wow.
We get people that say, never saw that, on the radar, and neither did we. We were running the reports to try and find out, what was the most popular method. Actually, I was trying to find out what was like the most popularly attacked plugin by hackers on WordPress sites for like the whole year. And as we dug further and further into the research, it was like, oh, wait, it's not. You can see, in our report, there's graphs that'll show, during certain times of the year, plugins, because you had the essential add-ons for Elementor exploit, so that, through the graph into showing that, in that particular time zone, time frame, that plugin was, the cause for most infections. But throughout the year, it was mostly stolen session cookies, because, stolen session cookies, it just totally bypasses 2FA.
Yeah. How can you explain a little more on what because I know what it is, but can you explain a little bit more for those listening? What is a stolen cookie session? What does that mean? How do they get it, and how can you prevent it?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. My screen just went blank for a second there. I was like, what? Session cookie keeps you authenticated, so you log in as an admin, and HTTP being the protocol that it is, it's like a sessionless protocol. So you do something on one web page, and then you go to another page, and chances are it has to make another. Not chances are it has to make another HTTP call between your browser and the website. But so it no longer knows if you're logged in or not. Well, that's what a session cookie provides. It provides a way for the website to know that, yes, you're still logged in, you're still authenticated with these rights. So yes, you can go to, this, install plugin page and install a plugin because you have the necessary rights. So that's a session cookie, but it's something that's on your local computer.
Yep.
It's not up on the website. And, I know you've interviewed, Kelvin, and he and I have talked, extensively about.
We spoke about the BRICS exploit.
Yes, you did. Yeah. But he and I have talked a lot about session cookies and, how they're used and so forth. So
how does one get a cookie?
Primarily other than
me logging in, and I'm supposed to be able to log in.
Okay. So what hackers do is they infect local devices, your laptop, your desktop, your phone, tablets, whatever the case. And one of the things that they're looking for is login details. And those login details also include session cookies, because they know that, it seems like at times the market, the industry is leaning more and more towards 2FA across. So, but like I said, if you have a session cookie and it hasn't expired, you've got keys to the kingdom. 2FA doesn't even factor into it.
No.
So they'll infect your local devices, steal everything they can, and then move on to the next one. And a lot of times, from research that we've done, talking to people in that industry, the hackers will delete their malware off your computer because they don't want you to know. This is how they think. They don't want you to know that your site or that your local device was ever infected, because then what are you going to do? Looks like my laptop was infected with a password stealing Trojan. So what first thing you're going to do? You're going to change all your passwords.
Yeah.
Now it just makes everything the hacker stole obsolete. So they don't want you to know. So they'll infect your computer, steal what they want, and then erase their malware off your computer. And it's their process is all automated, especially like with session cookies. They know that they have a limited time before that session cookie is expired automatically. So, it gets sent to their systems. Their systems automatically log in, put back doors on your website, whatever the case might be. And had a number of people say, who don't firmly believe in our research. They're like, they're stealing bank logins. What do they want with your, WordPress session cookie?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, look at
from a logical standpoint,
right? But at the same time, you look at the fact that how are most of their attacks carried out from an infected website? That's how they're going to try and infect your laptop or your local devices, is through infecting websites, and then just wait for you to go there, and off they go. They've got everything that they need. So they do. The websites are an integral part of the hackers' assets. Their digital assets.
Yeah.
And they need to replenish those, because everyone's finding out that, okay, I've got malware now. I've got to have somebody remove it and move on from there. So
that's the mechanism of how it works. How they're actually getting it, because they're essentially just lifting it from your browser store. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Does that also mean that the way the malware was installed is has that come in through the browser, or are we talking malware because you installed some app, or maybe your ports were too open? What kind of ways are they getting in?
All the above.
Okay.
They'll there's if you say were to Google the term info stealer, you'll see that they'll put bogus Chrome extensions available. And
I've
they'll
seen those. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, even when ChatGPT first came out, the number I read a report that the number of infected Chrome extensions for ChatGPT was way outnumbered the legitimate ones.
I've seen that too.
And people were so hungry. Oh, I got to get on ChatGPT. So they're downloading extensions and installing them and, never really realizing that you just infected your own computer. So,
yeah. Is there a way to sort of add a percentage to it? Like how much is actually from stuff you have? So first off, I know it's possible. How often does it in percentages? How often does it happen when you visit an infected site and it injects stuff on your local machine in your browser storage? How big of a chunk of malware is that? Do you have any idea?
Well, like I said, our report showed that 60% of sites were infected due to stolen session cookies, and it's like 42%, roughly 42% of the time, it's from visiting an infected website.
Yeah,
and looks like 38%, right around 38% of the time, it's from installing bogus like Chrome extensions, Firefox.
That's close to 80%.
Yeah,
and the rest is
open ports.
Whatever you install on your machine anyway.
Yeah. And also using like unprotected Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Hackers are still doing that. They'll set up in a shop and just wait for somebody who looks like a web dev to come in and, they log in and they steal all the information sent, during that session. Now that's low volume for a hacker, because it requires, you got to be on premise. Basically.
Yeah. And anybody worth their salt will not check in on a Wi-Fi that. But to be fair, there is a setting, at least on Macs, and I think on iOS as well. There is a setting where you can say if there's a Wi-Fi available, into it. I think there's also a setting that says only secure. But yeah, it picking up possible secure Wi-Fi combinations, it's just not a good thing to do. Not by default.
Nope, not at all. Yeah, it's bad. So but like you said, the whole bricks vulnerability.
Yeah.
Also, keeps the exploitable plugins first and forefront, because that's something that hackers can do. At scale, obviously, you look at the bricks exploit.
Calvin shared with me, outside of the conversation we published, but Calvin shared with me that within 45 minutes, because in the podcast, he said something about in a couple of hours, they have scanned the entire internet. I was like, in a couple of hours? That sounds super fast. And then he goes, well, I'll get back to you on that. And we talked about that after the podcast. And, like 15 minutes later, he shoots me a message. He says, I was wrong. It's not a couple of hours. It's 45 minutes.
Right.
Are you, what? So,
well, I mean, when you look at how many servers that hackers have access to through stolen,
exactly.
So compromised sites.
That's what he said. So it's the same of, if you trace back how many, forefathers you need to have for you to exist, if you just travel back 300 years.
Right.
Which is a blip, right? It's just
right.
And I forgot what the number said, but it is so high that it's just ridiculous. You go like, I exist because, let's call it 10,000 people existed. That's crazy.
Right.
The math compounds so fast. Most people don't understand how fast if you just times two, do that a couple of times and see how far you get. It's ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what Calvin said as well. He said to me, the number of what you have available to you is just ridiculously high.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you're infected, the way to infect more is just, there's nothing difficult about that process.
No.
It's fully automated. It's fully scripted. They just have to turn it on. That's it.
Right. They load up their exploit and turn it on. And people are like, well, like we were seeing, because, like I said, we stream log files live.
Yeah.
We were seeing where even sites that didn't have bricks were being attacked. Not successfully, obviously, but, because people are like, well, I need to hide my version of WordPress, or I need to make it so my site doesn't look like it's WordPress.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's obfuscation.
Right. As they call it, security by obscurity. And I mean, does it have somewhat of a place? Kind of, but, in a case like this, no, they're just,
No,
send it off, load it up, send it off. And
I've learned long ago that there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to detect what a site is running on without it showing it in the meta data anywhere.
Right.
It's just the way in is just so much easier than what people think.
Yep.
So out of curiosity, how did you get into the security side of things? Because it's not an easy field to really dive into, because first of all, the first 2, possibly 3 layers of anybody understanding security is just so much out there. Like, where do you start? Who do you listen to? What is the information that is valid? And because when it comes to high, topics that have a high impact, lots of times there's lots of opinions that really don't matter. So how did that work for you?
Well, I was lucky, I'm a programmer from way back, when I was a sophomore in high school, second year of high school.
Yeah.
I was always really good in math and science. And I was one of those kids, I'd get like straight A's in math and science, and then be getting D's and F's in English and history.
Which is also a language, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
So my sophomore year, our high school offered a 8-week programming class, and it was on a Teletype 33 terminal attached to a mainframe at Purdue University in Indiana. And
what was the language?
It was like, some of it was assembler.
Yeah.
But most of it was like a Fortran, COBOL kind of variant. I mean, it was, but, when people say, back in the day, I'm like, I can tell you back in the day, my programs were stored on punched cards.
Yeah.
But
a buddy of mine started that way as well. Just punch cards. He says, I still have a few. And then he shows me, I go, no way, that's code.
Well, one of the things we used to do, you see somebody with their homework, in the cafeteria, big stack of, IBM punch cards. You go over, you grab them, and you shuffle them.
Yeah.
They have to be in sequence or everything out of whack. I'm not saying I ever did that, but
no, but hypothetically you could.
Yeah. But I just fell in love with the whole concept of programming. I was like, wait, I can tell this thing to do what I want, and it's going to do it every time without arguing, without, discussion. It's just going to do it. Oh, I love this. Like I said, when I started analyzing JavaScript and PHP code, obfuscated PHP code, I was like, looking at, okay, so this variable calls this one, and they rename like base 64 to, $, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And then it's used here and there. And I was like, oh man, there's got to be I do it all manually, mostly because I just wanted to know what the code was doing. I mean, after a while, as you can look at some PHP code and you're like, yeah, okay, that's definitely, but it was finding it, because at that time they were on the average WordPress site when I first got started doing this, had about 2,100 files on it.
I think we passed them.
Yeah. Yes. So, you got to analyze all those files. Better come up with an automated way.
Yeah.
So, and now,
So it's essentially the analyzing and understand how it works that drew you into the security field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that, it seemed like a lot of people were getting a lot of wrong information, even back then.
Yeah.
There weren't that many.
I think it's always been that case. My focus is slightly more on performance, but the same thing happens there. It's like somebody has a very strong opinion on what performance is, and then that's being touted as the truth. And then from that, other people start telling their version of that truth, and it just sort of escalates down into maybe 25% covering what it actually is.
Right.
Like you mentioned earlier, the security by obscurity type security. It's not security. It's just making the guessing a little bit harder is not security.
Right. And, the people that hide their WP admin, by renaming it, there's plugins that do that. People do it with htaccess, all sorts of things. When you fully understand the mindset of a hacker, they don't care because they're infecting your local device. And when you get a password stealing Trojan on your computer, it steals the login URL, the username, and the password. Yeah. So, it knows what you changed your WP admin to.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I know.
It's like, so why even bother?
I've been trying to fight this battle of explaining people that it really doesn't make any sense. And I came across the article that you mentioned earlier, the vast majority being of hacks being originated from session hacking. It's a great validation for what I've seen in the vast majority of the hacks that I needed to clean in my almost 20 years now.
Wow.
And in the beginning, it was just the hacking kind was relatively straightforward. Those got more advanced as well over the years. So at first, it was just injecting a file or overwriting a particular core file in WordPress or playing with that. Then you got added htaccess files and then PHP files all over the place, and then the combination of that and JavaScript. As that became more and more important, saw fixes from them as well. But the trickiest in my mind is still the database. Once they're in the database, so obviously as soon as they're on the file system, they have your database credentials. If your hosting company doesn't lock that down to only be accessed by local, you have an even bigger problem because even if you keep them out, they're going to have a different way of being able to connect to your site and continue to do it all over again.
Right.
How do you solve the database side of things from your perspective?
Well, we have two parts to that question. One is if they're already using our freemium service, we see the changes made to the database. We see the traffic, we see the files, and we see the database. So we can see what they injected, and how they've done it. In a case where somebody is not using our service and they get infected and then they come to us, it's just a matter of digging through the database. We have automated procedures there too.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So, it's most of the stuff in the database, most of the malicious code, is JavaScript. So, you can scan the database looking for script tags. But, in JavaScript, most of the, base 64 stuff is the, ATOB function. So you can look for that. Parse int, is used, quite frequently in, infectious code in the database. So, yeah, and it's just a matter of knowing where to look. A lot of the stuff is going to be in the post meta, table. But it could also be in options, posts. Yeah.
Yeah. I've said,
and like I said, they're getting better and better at hiding it. It's just, we had one just the other day, they used a plugin custom -CSS -JS, and
makes sense.
from what I can tell, I don't remember all the details, but I remember it being a legitimate plugin, but much like Bricks, it allows you to inject custom code into posts and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, hackers took advantage of that. So
yeah. Give them a finger, and they will take the whole arm.
Yep.
Probably more even.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, there is a number of people that I do like to, talk shop with. Calvin's one of them. I know he's come on the scene. He's a young guy, mid-20s.
Yeah.
And
he's as old as my son, so that's an interesting concept in my head.
I told him, like, man, I'm 67 years old, so I got 42 years on him, and
yeah, exactly.
Dang, that's a couple of lifetimes for some people, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he really gets the concept, and I keep trying to, we have discussions about, why wouldn't hackers just this or do that? I'm like, well, because of this and that, it'll expose them more, and blah blah blah. So we talk, frequently about, the mindset of hackers, and a lot of people just don't get that part.
I was going to say that to me has always been the most important part of anybody wanting to do something malicious to your site. I've had clients who would say, why would they, attack me? Well, I'm a nobody. I have a site. Right. I have 3,000 visitors a month. What do they gain with my site? And then they look at it from a perspective of I have injected links to other stuff at site. So I have a domain rank of nothing. So why would they care? And then my answer has always been, well, that's the thing you see. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on that you do not see.
Right.
And it's not about you as what is the impact of your site. Although if you have a site that has 100,000 posts, they will prefer you with that one over, 500. But it's more of, if you have malicious intent, then you think in a very different way, because that's one vector of abuse they'll do. We don't see a lot of defacing sites anymore, but those are still there as well. But those are super obvious, right? They want to hurt you or your image or whatever. So, but all the other ones are just, and I'm glad you mentioned this specifically. They just want to appear like they're not there, which is a very different mindset from why should they even bother to care about me? They don't. But you are one of sometimes 10,000 sites that are being used to have a much larger goal. I've seen Bitcoin mining going on in sites that you go like, why is the CPU so high? But if you don't see that, if you're not monitoring for that, then how do you know? Like,
right.
Your hosting company's most likely not going to tell you that that's what happened. So they'll delete it themselves. They'll fix it themselves because, that's bad PR. But it continuously goes back to, if you don't understand the mindset of someone having particular malicious goal in life, then you're not going to comprehend why they're doing it or how they're doing it, or unless you say, okay, teach me, how do they think? How does this work? And okay, so, and I'd say that was my path, at least at a certain point in time, that I realized it's not about how I think about it, it's about how they think.
Right.
You made a career of this. And what would be the weirdest things that you've come across? Like, could you give a few examples of like, holy crap, that's something they do? Or
we were talking about monitoring processes before. We had a situation, this was maybe a month ago, where the process was tied to a Perl script hidden outside of the web folders.
Yep.
So it was in a publicly accessible part of Linux, and the process and the Perl script would constantly monitor each other. So we deleted the Perl script, and the process
Back it was.
detected it and put it right back. And we're like, wait a minute, we deleted that, right? Yeah. And so then we'd kill the process and then go back to kill the Perl script, and the Perl script would restart the process before we could kill the Perl script. It was like, so you literally had to do both, like, fingers on two buttons and just go dink, hey, done. And then it was gone. So, I mean, that was, watching it live. And in fact, on that one, was a decent size client for us. So, and he wanted to learn, and I'm sharing my screen, and he's like, wait, what? No. Like, yeah, look at this. It's so bizarre.
And in terms of goals they had, have you seen super weird stuff? Like the Bitcoin mining, that's, I think, pretty standard. If they can, they will. Gaining links hidden, I've seen those. Not that the impact of that is high, but what other type of weird, like this was their actual goal type of things that?
Well, we still see a lot where they'll load up a list of website, WordPress websites, and into, like, the malware that they upload onto a legitimate website will make a function call to their CNC server and grab a list of sites, usernames and passwords, and just try and do a password stuffing. I don't know, whatever they want to call it this week. But it'll try those username and password against like all the WordPress sites and that they have in their list. And, and that's, before I forget, that's one of the other things that we monitor is outgoing traffic, because that is also an indicator of compromise in IOC, as they like to call it. That your site, that one of your sites is infected. If you see a whole bunch of, attempted logins, to, somebody's website, or to a bunch of websites coming from your server, you pretty much can, guarantee that there's a site on there that's been infected. So,
is any of this stuff, one of the questions I'm sure people have now is like, okay, so what do you do to prevent this other than not downloading extensions and weird apps that you have absolutely no clear validity of them? What other type of things can they do? I mean, does a Cloudflare or a security firewall, does that work? Does that prevent anything?
Yeah. And it's funny, I was in this conversation yesterday with somebody, and they're like, okay, it's a hosting provider, and they're like, describe to me the perfect tech stack for for preventing my sites from being infected. And one right now, I know Kelvin has limited the distribution of his Fortress, but that's a good option for the front end. So either something like Solid WP or Fortress is good for the front end. And I say Solid WP because their trusted devices option, in their security stack, ties the IP address in the cookie. So if your cookie's stolen, it can't be used anywhere else, which is pretty interesting. And people have use cases like, that could be bypassed. Okay, but for the most part, so Solid WP or Fortress on the front end. Patch Stack, I have mad respect for Oliver and his crew, and what they do, and then our service on the server level. There's areas between in that stack where there's a little bit of overlap, but we each focus on we each have our own area of focus, and when you combine those three, it's kind of like, all right, well, I mean, could it happen? Could somebody bypass all that? Sure, it's always going to be possible, but you're drastically reducing the the possibility of that happening.
Yeah.
So,
so the two examples I gave in terms of firewall, either Cloudflare or does that do anything in terms of what hotspots of traffic or malicious traffic is coming to their network is probably, I'm guessing, quickly seen as a bot?
Yes. Yeah. And, as you well know, there's, people say, oh yeah, well, I've got a WAF, protecting my site. So, I'm safe.
Yeah.
How's it configured? You open up all the ports or, I mean, it's all, it's all in the configuration, as you know. So, Cloudflare, even the free version, Enterprise obviously gives you more options. But the free version,
Enterprise goes for $5,000 a month. So
yes. So you're signing up all your sites for that, right?
Yeah.
But no, they're, it's all, and how you configure it, obviously. And, with their free version, you kind of have to pick your battles. Do you want to block, large groups of IP addresses? Do you want to focus on blocking bots? Pick your main point of concern and go with that.
But what's good to realize is that security is not solved on one level, and it's certainly within application is not the only level.
Right. Yeah.
That if anything, so I did a podcast with Kelvin as well as the interview that I did. But in the podcast, we talked about the various levels of security.
Swiss cheese.
The Swiss cheese, exactly. Which is to say that there's multiple layers of where you need to mitigate. And it's not about one perfect layer. It's about all the layers as perfectly well working together as they can.
Right. Yeah. So it's an orchestration.
Yeah. And I think I said 2 years ago somewhere, I said my idea was that the amount of security related hacks that we're seeing is going to go upwards very, very fast in the next coming years because our computing power is just increasing ever so fast. I didn't necessarily predict AI as we see it now, but that most certainly is a large contributor in the uptick of stuff that we're seeing. So I always, like, for instance, my kids, when there is a security update for either iOS or the Mac or whatever, they will get a message from me, like, because if I work with this every day,
right?
You even. And in a way more intense way, but you have a different view of what the risks are of not updating, because it's not up. As soon as that fix is there, there's going to be people backtracing it. Like, okay, so I can do this. Not every single vulnerability is fully disclosed, but plenty of them are. And then you can just sort of work your way back. And if you don't, you can train your own little LLM to do that. Like,
right.
The idea is not to be thinking that you are secure. The idea is to be thinking, how can I prevent as much on as many layers, and how well is my mitigation?
Yeah. The getting into security and being in it as long as you and I have, it turns you into a critic of everything.
A little bit.
I look at everything nowadays. Somebody sends me an email. I'm like, is it really from you? Yeah. The theory used to be, well, if you're not expecting like an attachment from somebody, don't open it. Well, my son, I get my son's hockey schedule, for practices and games sent by his coach.
Yeah.
Am I expecting it? No, but
is that how it works? Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it really, it's made me more critical and analytical of, what could you possibly want by doing that?
Yes. From a so you interact with a lot of people from the WordPress community. Calvin being one, but I'm sure there's you mentioned a few others as well. But how connected are you to the WordPress ecosystem in terms of events and stuff like that? Do you go to WordCamps and meetups?
I went to my very first one was WordCamp US.
Which one?
WordCamp US in this last one in DC, Washington, DC. And it really opened my eyes, the meet and greets that I was able to initiate.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
So how welcomed are you in terms of the information that you bring? Because as discussed, there is a lot of misinformation that you're essentially saying, humbug, be gone with that, and this is how it works.
There was a lot. I sat down with some people. I'd walk past them and see their name tag, and I'd never seen their face before because most of these people I just know, from online, and so I'd walk past. Hold on. I'd tap them on the shoulder. Excuse me. My name's Tom Raef, and chat with them and stuff, and fire up a conversation, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you did that report last year on the Elementor add-on exploit, and and this and the that." And so you get chatting with people, and it was great. I got to chat with Mark Maunder from WordFence.
Yep.
He and I had some bantering on Twitter for a while there, but we both reached out, offline, not offline, but outside of the social media.
Yeah.
And we agreed that we would meet and sit and talk and kind of iron things out in person, and we did. It was awesome. I can't say enough nice things about that guy.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's it's one of the reasons I'm going to a lot of these WordCamps, just for the connections and the chance to talk to people in real life. I mean, I enjoy this. I enjoy X, formerly known as Twitter or whatever. All of that, but in real life is where it's at for me.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering. So the the events that you, this was the first time, like the events upcoming, is that something you're looking at? Like maybe want to do this more, or?
Yeah, I definitely want to do WordCamp. Where is it, in Portland?
Yeah,
this year.
Yep.
Definitely going to that one. I wanted to go to CloudFest, but
I am going. Actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to, but I can't break away, and I didn't even think about it until late. It used to be there was back in the day there was Hosting Con.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if that merged, or became CloudFest. I don't know how it all worked, but I used to go to Hosting Con.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same. I think they rebranded at some point.
Yeah. But I used to go to that all the time. I used to go to Black Hat in Vegas.
I've heard of it, never been.
Just because I like Vegas, and you get to sit in on all these security conferences. But the best part of that was DEF CON, which is like the real hackers. That always meets like right after Black Hat. And
is it also in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last time I went was, I think, like 2006, maybe. Because it's been a while. Just because it's that focuses on the broader spectrum of security, and I'm just totally focused on website security.
Yeah.
But it was so hot there because it's like the first weekend in August, I think it is, in Vegas.
I've been in Vegas twice, both in February. I will not have it any other way.
Well, at DEF CON, I mean, just, this crazy group of people, they were frying eggs on the sidewalk.
They would be. Yeah.
They just crack open eggs, and, they're frying them right there. And then a couple of guys would scoop them up and eat them. And you're like, No, I don't think
This is
so.
this is a good example of. I always say Vegas is something you have to see. In fact, I've seen it twice, and I'm more than happy to add a third and a fourth time. But it's a city that you should enjoy for a couple of days and then beat it.
Yeah,
because it's a different vibe.
yeah. I know some people go there for a week, and I'm like, I could handle Vegas for a week.
Yeah, I couldn't.
No. So, but I've been to, like in 2017, I was a guest speaker for security at the cPanel conference in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Cool.
And that was fun. I got to give my segment, and I called it like From the Trenches, website security from the trenches.
Yeah.
And I was just spouting off, things that we were seeing and so forth. And at the end, everyone's kind of crowding around because they want to, ask you some questions that they didn't have time for during your talk. And this one guy comes walking through the crowd, and he's pointing his finger right at me. He's like, you get it. You understand. I'm like, okay. I looked down at it. Oh yeah. He was with the FBI cybercrime division.
Okay.
He goes,
yeah.
We need to talk to you. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
So you get, oh, good to know. You have friends in high places. Nice. I like it. Well, I want to thank you for this conversation, and I'm very happy for the information you shared, because I think together with Calvin's interview and the podcast with Calvin, there's now 3 things published at least on the YouTube channel that are great insights into how security works within WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also happy to say that I look forward to seeing you in Portland then.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to be in Portland?
I am. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Most likely road tripping I'm landing somewhere in the US or maybe even Canada, and then road tripping to that side. I love road trips.
Nice. We'll have to find a gym somewhere and go hit some.
Oh, we should. If I'm adjusted to the time zone, we can. I've tried it before. I was like, no, I'm too tired.
Yeah, this has been great. I appreciate the time, and always happy to share information.
Yeah.
So,
thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Ramkus. You take care now.
All right, cheers.